there's a common issue where digital first brands don't really understand who their customers are very well. So you've got a lot of data. You've got purchase data, and this is what you all have, right? Is like all the purchase data, all that kind of stuff, which is really, really valuable, but there's a missing element. And I think that that element is still missing. And the reality is it's a really hard element to unlock. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we've unlocked it. Like we have a lot of plans, a lot of things that we want to do in the future. But at least we have given brands the ability to ask their customers questions.
All right, folks, this is something that I've been circling on the calendar. There's been some scheduling issues all on my side, but I have brought you the survey savant, Jeremiah Prummer. Jeremiah, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I am doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I am out in Austin, as always, in the marketing HQ. Where does this podcast find you today?
I'm in technically Aurora, Colorado, so just outside Denver. That's where I live. So working from home. You got my ceiling fan in the background right now. So
lovely
stuff.
ceiling fan. The audio sounds fantastic, so thank you for that.
Oh, good. Yeah.
How long have you been in Colorado?
Let's see. So 2015. So what is that? 7 years? So yeah, been out here 7 years. Lived in Montana previously and grew up in northern Idaho before that. So.
Oh wow! So you're an outdoors boy then. Those are proper.
Yeah.
That's some great nature out there.
Yeah, it was actually funny because when we were moving here, everybody here would be like, "So you gonna go skiing a lot when you're here?" And I was like, "Man, I spent my whole life 15 minutes from a resort. Like driving 3 hours doesn't sound as exciting." So yeah, it's definitely a mountain boy, and I think that's one thing I love about Denver. Like it's got the mountain culture, but it's a city, so it's still got all the city things too. So not like full on like a rural mountain culture, but it's similar at least, right? So
yeah. Not like West Virginia mountain culture, more
No.
the Montana's, Wyoming,
right.
that cowboy kind of I love that.
Exactly.
Boise's coming up, right? It's starting to be this little hotspot now.
It is for sure. Yeah. I mean, I grew up like way up north by Canada. We had like bears in our backyard and moose and caribous and things like that. So, so I haven't spent like a ton of time in Boise, but it was always like it's the hub, right? Like when you live in a state where it's 1 million people and 600,000 are in one place, it's like, that's where you go for anything really important. So, yeah.
And you guys had the proper bears up there, right? Because they're brown, Kodiak, or kind of the big ones. Because Colorado has the baby bears. You have the fun little black ones where they'll still kind of mess you up, but you semi have a chance against one of those.
Right.
Brown bear, it's done. It's all over. Like it's totally in the ballpark.
For sure. I mean, like grizzlies weren't super common like around my hometown, but like they're there. You got to be careful. So you go hiking. I remember this one time I was out hiking with some friends and we went out a ways and we were coming back and there was fresh bear poop in the trail. So it was like bear was chilling right behind us, following us around, I guess. I don't know what they're doing exactly.
Bears terrify me. Bears are absolutely terrifying. Did you hike with bear spray or anything like that? Or you guys would just raw dog it, no worries, we'll figure it
out? Depends at what point in my life.
Fair enough. What the risk profile was.
Yeah. As I got older, I definitely carried bear spray all the time. I would say when I was a teenager, I was not quite as intelligent.
I love that. So for folks that don't know you, you started a bunch of things that I want to get into, but most recently and most notably probably KnoCommerce, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So we do surveys for e-commerce businesses primarily on Shopify. But yeah, that's the business. So been doing that for a couple of years. We actually started it and we're incubated within a marketing agency. So that was kind of like our pre-seed round, so to say. Yeah.
Very cool.
And it was a good friend of mine, Pearson Crass, who owns the agency. He and I have been friends for 10 years, or close to 10 years anyway. And so that was kind of how we got it all kicked off.
So how did a rural boy like you get involved in marketing?
Yeah. So I went to school at Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana.
Another beautiful place, supposedly.
Yeah, Bozeman's amazing. Right outside Yellowstone. And in 2010, I believe it was, there was a tech company there that sold to Oracle. And so it was like a $2 billion exit. Um, yeah, so significant, right? And it
Proper money.
basically, yeah, basically created a bunch of millionaires overnight. And so I was in college at the time, but it's kind of turned into a tech town. I started my first startup in college. We tried to build like the Twitter for text message marketing, um, which was 2010, like super early, right?
Yeah.
Like text message marketing is common now, but back then people were like, "Why the hell would I text my customers? Like that's not, it's not something I'm gonna do." Unless the politicians were the only ones that wanted to use it. But the idea was that you could like subscribe to like local happenings, and get alerted that like, hey, this restaurant has 10 spots available tonight for $20 or whatever. Not, I guess it'd be more like a show restaurant sort of combo
Yep.
thing, but like that kind of stuff. But yeah, we were bootstrapped. We didn't have enough money, and text message marketing back then was super expensive. So it's still expensive, just to be clear, but it was significantly more expensive back then.
Well, and to also the rails were more expensive. I mean, back in
Yeah.
the day, like you're like, oh, well, hold on, Jeremiah's on the same plan as me, so
Yep.
Rabba, actually, you text him because if I text him, they're going to charge me,
Exactly. Yeah.
or because I'm old, so I remember you pay per message, and I would just get so infuriated when people would
Yep.
text me KK.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you just cost me a whole message. At least use it. It felt so
Yeah,
inefficient.
for sure. There were like hacks where you could email a email address that's tied to a phone number. I don't know if you ever did that, but then it's free. But you have to like get the right email address for the right carrier.
Yep.
Super messy. Like not doesn't really work at scale.
Amazing. What'd you call it? What was it called?
Uh, so we'd started like a company called Viewers, and so it's a friend of mine that was kind of his idea, but the specific product was via text. So like get notified via text. So
Not a horrible name. Pretty good.
yeah, I mean, we were young. I think I was 20 at the time. So yeah, it was fun though.
Amazing. When did Colorado Glasses come into play?
Yeah, so I actually from that experience, I actually built a WooCommerce extensions business after that. So that was kind of like the next thing that I did. That's how I met Pearson, who he was a merchant at the time. I ended up working with him on his website. But yeah, starting in 2012, I started building that business. And so that was kind of like that actually was successful, and I did have like a mini exit, but I basically sold my part to my business partner, who's in the Netherlands, so he's still running it today. But I took what I got out of that to start Colorado Glasses, and that was a sunglass eyewear brand. Basically bootstrapped to use my own money. Had a friend and my dad give me a little bit of money. But man, it goes fast. Like if you've ever any sort of physical goods business, you buy a little bit of inventory, and at least in my case, it's basically out of money. And so from there, it was like trying to make it work, and it was hard stuff. Yeah, I actually tweeted about this the other day, but like it, I think what I really struggle with, and I actually love the name of this podcast, "You Are Not Your ROAS," like almost this idea of identity and like tying your identity to your work. And I don't know if that's entirely the objective or the goal, but like that was such a huge problem for me, and especially when it's your startup and it's struggling and you're just trying to keep this thing alive, it feels like you're dying a little bit too. And so that
100%.
yeah, it was a super hard time. Basically spent 2 years trying to do that, but it was bootstrapped, took on a lot of debt, and just tried to tried too many sales channels. And so we saw like a lot of local events and festivals and stuff did pretty well. We did about 200K in revenue our first like full year. But it wasn't enough. So it was, and just like we just couldn't. I think if we would have had money and been able to like, one, if I wouldn't have made so many mistakes early on and inefficiently use money, but two, like if we would have had a little bit more bandwidth, I think it could have been okay. But I think we would have done something with it because people loved it. People loved the company, the product, all that. But just getting to scale is hard. So I definitely relate with all these brands that are trying to make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's one of the misconceptions of DTC, is that it is incredibly capital intensive.
Hmm.
People think, oh, we'll just scrap some money together and start a business. It's
Yep.
like, man, you're holding inventory,
Hmm.
you're paying people, you're a lot of times too, unless you can get like the cash conversion cycle right, it can get really
Yep.
hairy because you might not get paid for 90 days or something
Yeah.
like that. And so it's just like you have the money, but
Yep.
like it's not coming to you yet. So like what do you do
Hmm.
in the meantime
Yep.
if you're not capitalized? Like how do I bridge this gap? How do I pay
Yep.
my employees? How do I make the next PO to then so I don't run out of stock? Like it's I think it's a very big misconception out there that you just scrap some money together and you can make it work. Or it's a really
Yeah.
capital intensive
I
industry.
mean, you can go like on Alibaba and put together a purchase order for something for $5,000-$10,000. You get some product, but like that's just one piece of it. Like there's so much more that goes into it. And yeah, it's easy to just to have it not work in terms of like the numbers, and your profit margins have to be good. And I think that's another thing too. Somebody looks at it and they're like, well, this product cost me $5 to make, like technically speaking, but by the time you actually like deliver that to the customer, it's actually like $15 or $20, right? So, and then you got to have enough margin for, do you want to do wholesale? Can you actually make your ads work? All that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just delivering the product. How are you going to
Right.
acquire the customer? How are you going to like pay your
Yeah.
employees to do like there's just I'm totally with
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
So is this the company that was the dumpster dive tweet?
Yeah. That was it.
It's such a vulnerable tweet, man. It's incredible. So for people that don't know, first off, you should follow Jeremiah. He's one of my favorite followers on Twitter, but his pinned tweet is actually, ultimately the too long didn't read paraphrasing was, now I'm doing well, but before 4 years from this tweet, I was essentially dumpster diving to kind of make ends meet. And it's a big shift, right? From you scrapping it together to having your first exit, or
Yeah.
like meaningful exit.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it was just a hard time. I think like at that time I actually did have a job and I had money coming in, but I also had $3,000 a month debt payments that I had to make. And so like it was literally, I mean, like $200 in the bank account at a time sort of thing. Like I was late on rent every month by like a week and always had to pay like $50 late fee to my landlord and all that, right? So it was like that whole thing. So
Poverty's tough, man.
it is, yeah. And
It
yeah,
layers on.
it absolutely does. And I think like at the end of the day, I'm really grateful for that. I think technically, like my family was impoverished when I was really young, like up until about 6, 7, 8 years old, until my parents started a business that was successful. Like we had food stamps and Medicaid and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't. It's different. Like as a child, you don't really notice, at least in that context. Like it felt normal, but as an adult, it's like how like what happens if I can't make this payment? Like that stress is so hard. Like hard on your relationships, hard on everything. So I think like I just, at the end of the day, I'm grateful to have gone through that, even if it was only for basically a year or two. Um, but yeah, it was hard. I'm not gonna. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And frankly, at the end of the day, like my situation was better than a lot of people. So I'm also not gonna sit here and say that like that I've been through the hardest things. There's a lot of people that go through much worse. So
Yeah, for sure. I had similar kind of experiences where I didn't put a full tank of gas for
right.
years because I got $3 in the account.
Yeah.
We'll throw $3 in the gas, and we'll figure out how we're gonna get the next $5
Yeah.
in the tank.
And
So,
what did that
yeah.
feel like for you in the moment?
Pretty horrible, man. I mean, to your point, it was that a lot of the identity, and I knew I was destined for greatness. I knew I had the ability to do things, and I just wasn't. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't cutting my way. And then, to your point too, you just get into these kind of like feedback loops, but in a bad way,
Yeah.
right? Like so you the rent payment, then you bounce a check, and then you these things, and
Yep.
so it's like you don't have the money, and now you have $600 or $700 in like ancillary fees that weren't there
Yeah.
before, and so it's just like how do I
Yep.
pay this stuff? How do I get? And you're just never. It's almost like breaking the wheel. Like it just comes into this really. So I just went really minimalist, and it just like I just cut it, and it helped me out too because it got away from a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
waste where I started to live a really efficient, more meaningful life. But yeah, it was very hard, man. It's hard where you uh, be. They always say like rich people and poor people like. It's never great to be in poverty, but man, like rich people have like other problems. But I'll tell you what, man, having money and getting over those problems is way better than when you're trying to figure it out. Like it is. It is not the path. And to your point, like I wasn't ever like never gonna have a meal, but like I remember actually one time where my mom would get me these little gift cards because she would go shopping and stuff like that, and she would get credit card points. And obviously, like I want to make it on my own. I don't want to like lean on my parents for too much and stuff. And plus, they weren't not wealthy at all. I mean, we're lower middle class at best, kind of thing. And so in college, just trying to make it work, get out of college. And I remember that I didn't have any money to eat, but all I had is these fancy gift cards. So I was getting steak at like Longhorn Steakhouse and stuff like that. So I was just like, how backwards is my life right now that I have no money? But the only thing I have to get food with is like these gift cards of these fancy restaurants. It was just such a bizarre
You're just like
time
eating a third of the steak and saving it for 2 more meals.
What am I doing? It was, it taught me a lot, man. It taught me a lot. And I think there's definitely a lot of value in going through trials and tribulations. But to your point, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I think there's smarter ways to go through it where you can have some kind of backstops and stuff like that, where I didn't, where like it could have cut left or right and I would have been really, really behind the 8 ball. But such is life, we both came out okay. So hopefully this will help people. But I do think that one thing that was very helpful to me was understanding, and this does get challenging when you have like a really menial, horrible job, but I think there's 2 paradigms in life. There's a time, you have more time than money and more money than time.
Yeah.
And, I had more time than money. And so I would just learn. This was YouTube was really burgeoning. I was a nerd, so I'd actually go to the library a lot. And so there was a lot of things that I was really just trying to better myself, but it's a challenge when you have to work like at 8 to 5, 9 to 5, where you just hate your life. It's very brainless kind of stuff. And then you got to turn up to do that. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a interesting time.
For sure, man.
For sure.
I mean, along those lines, I think I can't say it's my favorite job, but in some regards, my favorite job I've ever had was when I was a dorm janitor in college. Cause I would it was 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Everything is silent. Just put in headphones, just go about my day, do the work. Like I didn't have to think about what I was doing. I got to think about like whatever podcast I was listening to, or music, or just think like hours to just like think about things. And I haven't had that since, that kind of just like 8-9 hours a day for 2 days a week. Like that was pretty sweet. And it would, if that was all I was doing, I'm sure I would have hated it eventually, but like having that space and time was really nice in that regard.
Man, I can totally empathize with you, because now, I mean, you're also in the executives in the C-suite as the CEO, and I'm CMO at Triple Well, and we very rarely get any deep work. I mean, pretty much in executives, a decision machine, right? You're just synthesizing information. Like, okay, you do that. Like constant. There's never this like, hey, I'm going to take 2 to 3 hours, or I'm going to take the weekend and just like, and think about all the hard problems. And so I think it was either Jobs or Gates has the think weeks where they'll just go off the grid for, so maybe we need that at Triple Well, because in a weird way, I do miss it, because my whole life was pretty much individual contributor up until now. And so that was cool. You just get to, like, to your point, you just get to log off and be like, I'm going to think of a really brilliant way to code this or do that or do this. And that's just not the case when you're in the C-suite as an executive.
Man. It feels like anything that takes more than 5 minutes is like really hard to do. It's like I put it.
Why are you wasting so much time?
It's like if it's gonna take me more than 5 minutes to do it, I'm not doing it for a week. Like whatever it is, like I don't know. It's not always true, but that's how it feels at least. So yeah.
Yeah, it definitely feels it for me. It's almost like you're just on this like roller coaster, and you're just constantly just like, and you're just going by, and you're just like trying to fit stuff on the shelves. But What was one of the things that you used to kind of get you through those dark times? Was there any frameworks or beliefs or values that you're like, hey, this, just keep on going and it's always darkest before the dawn kind of stuff? Or like, how did you kind of
Yeah,
peek through those really,
that's a
unique
good
times?
question. I think there's a couple things there. One, like I've always, in terms of like pushing through the hard stuff, I've always had a lot of self belief, for lack of a better term. Like believe that it's going to happen, believe that I'll be able to overcome it, all that kind of stuff. I will say though, what that time did for me was it clarified for me that that's not always true. And I think that's a realization that has been really important for me. And this is something I struggle with constantly because I always want to do more than I really have the capacity to do. And so, that was like really the first time in my life though, where like I hit that wall over and over and over and over, and I just couldn't get past it. And that happens sometimes. And so, um, I think like for the day to day challenges, like the role that I'm in now, it's perfect because like that's kind of how it is, right? And I'm sure that's what you experience. Like there's always more than you can do.
No.
But I still struggle with that. Like the last 2 weeks, my family's been sick a lot. My daughter's been home from daycare. Like I've had, I'm putting in 30 to 40 hours of work, but then like 40 to 50 hours of childcare. And that's my capacity. Like I can't put in 50, 60 hours like I would normally do. And just to be clear, like I enjoy doing, that's kind of like my number that I'm comfortable with. And so I just can't do that right now. And so for me, it's really difficult because I feel like I'm not doing enough. And at the same time, I have to realize that that's all I'm capable of right now. And so, I think that time, that really dark time, was good in opening my eyes towards that being the reality of life. At the same time, I wouldn't say that that's a struggle that I'm like fully through with. So, I don't know. Maybe ask me again in 10 years. Maybe I'll have it better figured out. But yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I love that. I think that there's a certain aspect. So I use something called time
Yep.
blocking because, like before, I would just, oh, of course I can get all this stuff done. And then so for people that don't know, time blocking is essentially exactly what it sounds like, where you say, hey, I'm going to do this during this time, this during this time. And so my day is essentially, my whole week actually is totally planned out from when I wake to when I go to bed. Even my social activities, because I die in a vacuum. Like I don't know what it is for me, but like if you give me free time, I waste it. It's this really odd thing that I have. But if I like take a second to just segment that stuff, but it makes me honest because I'll have my like little to-do list. I use something called AccuFlow. And basically if I star something in Gmail, if I bookmark something in Slack, or if I get assigned a task in Asana, it goes into this little inbox for me. And then I can just move stuff over my calendar. And then I realized like, oh man, I'm not going to do that. And for me, a lot of the anxiety was self-induced because to your point, like I would
Yeah.
just overcommit. And then I feel horrible because even though I was actually being like quote unquote productive, I was
Yeah.
never getting it all done because I had this infinite list, and it built a very like bad psychological loop for me where I never
Uh-huh.
felt accomplished, or there's always something more, always something more. And it's like you need to feed the dream, and you need to every now and then on the road to success, stop at the mile markers and say, hey, I'm doing good. I'm not saying you should marinate there, but
Yeah,
you should definitely like
for sure.
there's something to that.
Yeah, man, and I think that kind of gets into the second piece of that time for me, which is going back to like the podcast name, this whole identity thing, and like for me at that time, my identity was very closely tied to my work, and I'm a Christian, and I've got this idea of relationship with God, and so like when you talked about beliefs, like that's a big thing for me. But like during that time, it was very much like I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this until I don't. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think what was really eye opening for me, I was actually like on a church retreat when I came to the realization that like man, like God cares about me regardless of what I do. It has nothing to do with my
It's beautiful.
accomplishments. Because, and just to take that a step further, if I believe it has something to do with my accomplishments, and I'm a fairly accomplished person, or I'm less accomplished than somebody else, that means that God would think more or less of me, and more or less of others based off of that. And I don't believe that's the way it is. I don't think that that's the way it can be. And so like for me, that was also a really big thing, just to be like, man, okay, it's okay for me not to, I don't know, like if I'm being perfectly honest, like you all raising all that money was, I was like super excited about that. And at the same time, slightly jealous. I'm like, man, we just exited for a way lower valuation. I don't know, like we've been on a similar time trajectory path, I guess. Um,
Yep.
well,
Yeah,
and
you
I
guys are
mean, but
blowing
like
up.
we're not as big, right? We didn't we there's different cycles and seasons and markets and all that kind of stuff, and like you guys hit one perfectly, and we the way our product works, it's not quite the same, and so it's easy to look at something and be like, I should have been able to achieve that thing that somebody else did, without stopping and saying, no, it's okay. Like this is perfect. This is great. This serves a need for a ton of people, and like doing that is enough, because if I don't believe that's enough, then it means that I don't believe what other people are doing is enough either, and I don't want to be that person. So I think that's been a really big thing for
Yep.
me.
I love that. Yeah, and I think it's so easy to get on that hamster wheel, where it's just like more, 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 more versus like to me, like I'm a
Yeah,
hyper capitalist. I
absolutely.
love accomplishment. I love all this stuff. But at the end of the day, like, or and this is just my kind of personal values. I think the only thing in this world that really matters is
Absolutely,
deep
man.
connections with humans you care about.
Yep.
And so resources and all that stuff can help facilitate that. But if you're going to live in a golden palace
Right.
by yourself, it's like that's super unappealing to me. Like
Yeah.
I don't want that at all. And so all these things to your point, like I had a big kind of identity crisis too. Is like
Mhm.
do do the work, do the best you can, and there's definitely like some values to that where it's like I'm not saying be a slacker and stuff. Like I do believe action breeds action, and you do need to like put in the work. And I, in a weird way, I do also believe in
Yeah.
manifestation. Like I think you need to see where you want to go and then try and like make that come to life. But at the end of the day, man, if you have people around you that you love and you can love yourself and then love other people and help people that are less fortunate than you kind of live a better life. I don't know. I think there's honor in that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you don't have three commas in your
Yep.
bank account, it is what it is. Maybe like if you're religious, maybe that's not what your
Yep.
God had planned for you or what have you. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you're never going to be like, man, I should have worked more. It's definitely going to be like, hey, I should have went on that trip, or I
Absolutely.
should have reacted and had a better relationship with my kids or my significant other, stuff like that. You're never talking about, oh man, I should
Right.
have, gosh, I should have wished I would have had 20 more
Yeah.
points in my portfolio this year. You know what
For
I mean?
sure.
It's just like it's
And the
just
reality is,
not
man,
the path.
if you got money in your bank account, you're
uh
ahead of 90% of people in this country. Ni-
if you're
Yeah.
born if you're born in the States or the UK,
Yeah.
you're ahead of like 90% of the world. Like just being in those two
Right.
countries, you just have or in Canada, you have so many advantages that like all these people like, or you're just
Yeah.
you're so advantaged. So yeah, I think they're that's something that too that I always I can't remember who told me this, but ultimately, like if you want to get motivated, look at where the people are, and
Mhm.
if you want to feel gratitude, kind of you can
Yeah.
look at where people were, where it's just like, hey, you're fine, it's okay. Like if you compare yourself, it's like
Mhm.
gratitude for me is just such a grounding
Yeah. Yeah.
activity where it's like, dude, it's okay, it's fine. You don't
Right.
have a yacht, but you're not going hungry. Like, and it helps too to have
Mhm.
have those reference points too, right? Where I remember I could barely literally I'd put $3 of gas in my car, and I kind of didn't know. Or the other thing you were talking about, which was the worst, where it's like I have X amount of dollars that can't pay the
Right.
bills. So what bills am I not
Yeah.
going to pay? Like it's like, dude, I'm paid
Yeah.
up. This
For
is
sure.
great. Like
And yeah.
relax.
Like, and there's a certain point where like you don't even know what to do with the money anyway. So like, and it doesn't even take that much. Like that's the crazy thing. It's like, I mean, I can figure something out, but like, I don't need it. Like, what am I gonna do? You gotta start to put it to work.
That's literally what the wealthiest people say is like, I'm at a certain
Yeah.
point where like I couldn't even spend this in my lifetime. Even if I bought yachts and yachts and yachts or whatever,
Right.
like ridiculous, egregious islands and stuff, I have so much money that I not only can I not spend it, I
Right.
can't
Yeah.
absorb any of the value from it. It's like you have 10 houses. How are you? What are you going to do with 10 houses? You know what I mean? And so I think that's why you see a lot of people go into kind of a philanthropic bent, because it's like, I've already made it. My game's kind of played. Like maybe I can
Yep.
help other people that are less resourced,
Yeah. For sure.
try and build their path. Um, what a
Yeah.
fun main segment. I'm
Okay.
gonna
Cool.
one more for you in the main segment, and then we'll wrap it up. What is the
Ooh,
nicest thing someone's done for you?
interesting. Man, I'm gonna have to go with my wife. Like at the end of the day, she has put up with a lot over the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's hard sometimes. It's been hard, right? Like she's let me be an entrepreneur. She's let me go through a lot of things, and I mean, even having a kid and trying to figure out work stuff. And I think she's just put up with a lot. So I appreciate her a ton. And yeah, I wouldn't be who I am without her for sure. So.
Oh, man, that is definite brownie points there. Great answers.
I need them right
Great
now anyway,
answer.
so
Well
it's
played,
perfect.
sir. Well played. That's beautiful.
But it's true.
It's to be fair, I'm not married. I'm engaged, but I came on full time as CMO in September, but really hit it in October. And for those first few months, I wasn't really showing up the best I could have in my relationship. So it definitely takes a very unique partner for kind of early stage stuff, because there's just a lot
absolutely.
that you can do better. But okay. All the fluffy stuff.
Okay,
People
cool.
know you now. Let's get into the nerdy stuff. This is the value add segment. This is why the people bought the ticket. Why did you start No? What holes in the market did you see? Or like, what was the thought process there?
I mean, I got started in e-commerce in 2012, so I'd been doing it for a while, and then my friend Pearson was running an agency, and so we both had there's a common issue where digital first brands don't really understand who their customers are very well. So you've got a lot of data. You've got purchase data, and this is what you all have, right? Is like all the purchase data, all that kind of stuff, which is really, really valuable, but there's a missing element. And I think that element is still missing. And the reality is it's a really hard element to unlock. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we've unlocked it. Like, we have a lot of plans, a lot of things that we want to do in the future. But at least we have given brands the ability to ask their customers questions. And really the vision was like, there's a few different ways you can kind of do that. There's a tool called Enquire Labs that's like a post-purchase survey tool. Grapevine is another one for Shopify. But again, it's like ecosystem specific. It's single location specific. And then you've got like your Typeform or your SurveyMonkey, which like they don't connect the customer to that information. And so it was really like, how can we make this more like easier for brands to deploy, for one, and then two, like actually connect it back to the customer, back to that data. So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we've got it all figured out, but WeCommerce believed in us enough and our vision to buy us, so that was good, and that unlocks a lot of resources and puts us in a position where I think we got a lot of really cool things that are coming, and I'm excited to get all of that done. So it'll be different in a few years.
I love it. And we have a lot of mutual customers that speak incredibly highly of you, that use some other things in this space, and then they pretty much landed on you, where you're the soup du jour for, especially too, what's really interesting is the spectrum of clients that you guys serve, where you do have some kind of like startup early stage people, and you have some people printing money as well. So it's pretty interesting to see how you guys are able to service kind of quite the again spectrum or band of different style or businesses that are
and that's one of the
stages
challenges,
of their
honestly,
journey. It's really cool.
is that. So like, we have brands that we work with who are doing 9 figures in annual revenue, and we have brands who set up the store 2 days ago. And that's part of the strategy. That's what we want. That's how we get to this point of unlocking that insight about the customer. However, they have different needs, and so that's been a big thing that we're working on constantly, is how do we do that? How do we make it like we want to make it really affordable for both brands, but affordable means different things. For the guy that just started a store, that's probably free. For the guy that is doing $100 million a year, affordable might be $100,000, right? Like, so it's just different, and trying to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at has been the hard thing.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and to kind of build on the difficulty there,
absolutely,
the value absorption is going to be different, right? Where at those bigger stores where you get 1 or 2% lift, that's significant money. Whereas you get 1 or 2% lift on a store doing $10,000 a month, it's like,
absolutely,
you're not going to fill it. It's negligible in a way. I love that. What are the best parts and what are the hardest parts?
Best part is just getting to engage with so many brands doing really cool things. So I think, like, we spend a lot of time just talking to our customers, which is ultimately what we want our customers to be doing with their customers too. So that's the my favorite part. The hardest part is data scale, and I'm sure you all deal with this too. Like dealing with data at scale is hard and expensive. That's the thing too. Like we have merchants who are doing that kind of like 100 million a year in revenue sort of volume. Maybe not quite that. No, yep. I mean, I guess they would be paying us this. So $100 a month is what they're paying us, which is amazing for them. They love it. They're never going to turn it off. At the same time, we're actually losing money on that customer. So we do believe that it fits into our larger mission and our plan, and we know there's ways that we can help them do more later and charge more money. But at the same time, like that kind of stuff, it does get expensive. And I guess I do believe though that as we scale and as our systems become better and more efficient and all that, it does become less expensive on a per user basis, or however you want to define that. But yeah.
We've had the same challenges with some of the unit economics of the a store.
Yeah, you guys have a lot more data than we do.
A store doing 500 million a year. It's like we have a lot with the, especially if you have the pixels.
Basically, like every single page view, all of that being stored. It's insane.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But it's necessary, and to your point, like we'll work out the unit economics when necessary. They're not incredibly distorted. But,
right. I wouldn't. There's no way I would have a free trial for the Pixel either.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have any gray hair. You have a fabulous head of hair. But Colorado what gave you more gray hair? So, Colorado glasses? Or
I would say like doing it alone. I wasn't actually alone. Just to be clear, I had a friend who was basically a business partner in that, but like. We did not have the same support. We didn't have funds. So I think one of the rules that my wife and I kind of put in place after that experience was that I'm not doing another startup where I don't get a paycheck. And so I did get a paycheck for no. That was one of the things. And I'm underpaid, but it's not like, but it's enough, right? And so at the end of the day, like that's the thing. And so there's 12 years of being an entrepreneur, you kind of have to set some rules and guidelines, and that was that one. So it means I don't get the same payout. And I even went back to her, I was like, hey, we would have made like way more money if I would have just worked for free for a year and a half. And she was like, yeah, but it's not happening. I was like, all right, cool. Maybe the next one. We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe the next one. Yeah. I love that though. That's a really good actual rule. I think,
yeah. Life stage matters.
I mean, again, depending on where you're at in your life, but not having cash, not having cash flows,
because you can't. It's not sustainable if you don't have it.
Truly is.
That's the big thing. So, yeah.
No, you're basically buying a lottery ticket, and then who knows? And then by the time you do get out, you might be diluted to all, and so it doesn't even matter. And there's some tons of nuances.
No.
Did you see the acquisition coming? How'd it work? Because this. They just kind of blindsided you. Said, "Man, you're sexy. These look great."
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was coming
and
for
then
about
cut you a
3
check.
months,
Or
like, it was not part of the plan. But you hit certain inflection points, and when we were looking at like what do we want to do, that was and I talked to a few other entrepreneurs, and interestingly, I talked to a lot of people who are raising money, and they're like, "Man, if you can exit. Like if that's on the table, because you're not guaranteed anything if you raise money. Like you may get a really big payday someday, and your odds get better the more rounds you raise, all that kind of stuff. But like at the same time, like there's I don't know. I just kind of that was eye opening for me to talk to so many people who had raised money that said if an exit's on the table and you feel comfortable with the numbers, take it. And so I think that was a big piece of it. So and it's essentially our seed round is kind of the way I describe it. So instead of us raising the seed round that we were going to raise, we exited, which means we get the cash, which is nice, and then they're committed to helping us grow. So I think it's been a win-win. So don't get the crazy valuations, don't get the shot at $100 million paycheck someday, but at the same time, I get to pay off all my debts from Colorado glasses. I get to set my family up for something better, and that's a win as far as I'm concerned. So. Exactly. Yep.
And you still get to drive the boat.
Huge.
That you put together, which is another really fulfilling. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. It's awesome. How do you see the
Oh,
next two
interesting
to three
question.
years unfolding in e-commerce?
I think so. The couple of things. One, I think the privacy stuff is just going to keep pushing forward. So I don't think we're done with that. So that's something I'm thinking about all the time. I think customer acquisition is going to change. That's another thing I'm thinking about all the time. So I kind of look at it as I think Facebook and the big social platforms, basically Google, that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be kind of like your low quality branding budget, for lack of a better term. And I think like a lot of people are. I think there's going to be other smaller targeted ad networks, for lack of a better term, that will show up. So community based sort of things, Instacarts, that kind of stuff, right? I have no idea how effective Instacart ads are, but like I think there's something really powerful there that if they unlock it, they'll be able to drive a lot of revenue for CPG brands and all that. That's going to be more valuable than putting out Facebook ads, right? So those kinds of things I think are going to be important. And then the last thing that I think about a lot is merchant price sensitivity on like the tech side in particular. When you have cost of goods climbing the way that they are, when you have the cost of delivering your product climbing, getting it in hands, like there's all these things that you ultimately can't control. The one thing you can control is how much you're spending on your tech, how much you're spending on your employees, that kind of stuff. So I actually do think that like we've seen a lot of tech companies come out here and they basically are charging based off of your revenue. And you guys do that to some extent too. I think that it works and it doesn't work. It depends on the type of tech, right? So with something like a triple whale, I think it makes sense, especially on the pixel side, because like there's a cost to like directly associated to that traffic. But when you are an upsell app that's charging based on a percentage of revenue, I think the guy that's charging $49 a month for his app that unlocks everything is going to beat you because the big merchant is going to take that, right? So I think we're going to see a big shift in the way tech has to start charging merchants as well. So that's another big piece of it.
I love that, and I totally agree with you. I think there's certain times that usage based makes sense, but I think
Yeah.
there's other times where like like business objectives and stuff. I totally agree with you, and I think that like for
Right.
example, like Klaviyo, of course it makes sense to charge by email. You know what I mean? You get bracketed and bucketed, but I'm with you. I think that there's going to be a big shift in that, and then also to your previous point, who was I talking to? I think Sam from Regatta, or I can't recall who I was talking to, but the Too Long Didn't Read was a promotion on Uber Eats
Yeah.
was like absolutely
Yep.
smashing for them. And so it was kind of what you're talking about, like an Instacart, like these
Yep.
different kind of inventories that are fairly
Yep.
obscure. Like if you find the right vertical, is going to be a much more efficient and
Yep.
effective deployment of your paid media than just going into like a Facebook ads or something like that. And then kind of furthermore for us,
Right.
why this is even better is because
Yeah.
then the attribution gets even wonkier.
Yeah, for
where it's
sure.
like these
It's
little
better for
crazy
both you
things
and
aren't
me.
like, how are you going to measure the lift there? And
It's
so,
like, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah. People
Yeah,
helping
I
people. It's
totally agree
powerful
on
stuff.
that. I mean, like, because essentially the
Um,
problem is that it's harder to target the right person. And so if you just go to where you know that person's hanging out, then that's a totally different scenario. So, yeah.
Yeah, and furthermore, to build on top of that point, I think that
Yep.
quite frankly, the economics have been sussed out on Facebook, where I think there's very little arbitrage now. Like I think they're fairly priced. I think the ads are fairly priced. Like you could still make money on Facebook. It's still like a great ad buy, but it's
That's true.
nothing that it was
Yep.
like 5 to 7 years ago, where they're just insanely underpriced, and you would just
Hmm.
put $1 in, you get seven out. It's like, how does this work? Yeah, just keep doing that. Where now I think they're not overpriced. I think they're actually accurately priced, and
Yeah.
as a media buyer, I want to go to a place where there's arbitrage. And then to your point as well, there is
Yep.
some inefficiencies in the targeting, which kind of distorts that economics even more. Where before the targeting was amazing and they were underpriced, so you had like both of these tailwinds behind your economics. Where now you really
Yep.
don't even have either. One's
Yeah.
fairly priced, and then the
Well, and
other
like,
one's
so
more of a
I've got a
headwind.
friend who's
So yeah, that's very astute.
he's a influencer basically in the tech developer world. He works at Netflix. He gets like 100,000 plus views on YouTube every month, and he just wants to make it as an influencer, and like that's what he wants to be able to switch into someday. And so he's selling ad space for dirt cheap to prove that it works, right? And that's essentially what happens in these smaller markets. Like that's what they're doing. they're trying to prove it works, and then you start to add systems in place and people to manage and all that, and it has to become more expensive. And so yeah, I totally agree with you. Like I think we'll see kind of cycles of these newer platforms. I mean, that's kind of what TikTok is today. And so yeah, who knows what TikTok is going to look like in 2 years or even a year.
Yes.
But I don't think it's going to be the same cost.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. And that, I mean, that ultimately, transparently, that's what we're doing. We're sponsoring podcasts, we're sponsoring YouTube channels. We're doing these things that, like, if you take into account like our return on ad spend as well as our CPMs, they're just blowing out of the water the traditional actual paid channels, which is it's really incredible to see. Okay, 2 more questions, then we'll get you into the rapid fire. What is one thing people in e-commerce community aren't talking about that should be?
Man, I guess I'd kind of go back to my last point. I think the economics for retailers for people that are selling online, I think that's the biggest thing that we're not talking about. That if you are a brand doing $100 million a year and you've got all of this stuff that's basically eating away at your margins, it defeats the purpose of scaling. The entire point of scaling a business is to increase your margin. And so like if that doesn't work, you're either going to cut back and do the things that work and less of the other things, or you're going to find ways to cut costs. So to me, I think that's one of the biggest things that I don't see anybody talking about, but I think we need to be talking about it more. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The fancy term for that is the unit economics, where your unit economics are like, it doesn't matter if you're making 100 million or $1 million, they're the same, and because people are taking percentages, not flat fees, and so it doesn't matter how big or small you are because it's, again, a percentage. Okay, I love it. This one's right in the wheelhouse. What are some tips for setting up your post-purchase?
I'm gonna try to be unbiased here. I like to promote other systems as well, because I think at the end of the day, I want everybody using a survey, regardless of if you're using ours. So that's kind of my approach. If I'm just going to start it off with this, if you are using our system, use one of our templates. So we have pre-built templates for this stuff that are super powerful, and basically, like, we've spent a year and a half optimizing them, so they're ready to go. You just need to modify whatever little things you want to, and deploy it. So that's kind of first thing. But regardless of what you're doing, I'm going to say start with a super easy question and make it multiple choice. So start with a how did you first hear about us question, or something else. Maybe you're doing a survey for returning customers, but just start with I'm just going to select this option and then boom. And that first question then sets the tone for everything else. So you want it to be friendly, you want it to be engaging, you want it to be easy. And so let them select that question. If you're using our system on like a radio question, we automatically move you to the next. You can go back and edit if you want, but like we keep them flowing through quickly. And that's part of the reason why we have it's like a 87% average response or completion rate on these surveys. So initial response is like 50-ish%. Completion, though, percentage of people that fill out the entire thing is 87%. And a lot of it's because of that flow, right? That's sensational. Definitely ask open-ended questions, but put them at the end. So let people give you other data first. And then if you need to ask anything personal, so let's say you're collecting a birthday and you want to deliver like a birthday campaign, you could do something like that, but like save that question towards the end, because people are either going to skip or they're going to drop off like some percentage of them. We just know that 1 in 5 people is just not going to give you their birthday. So put that question at the end. And then I think if you're using Enquire, I'm sure this is the same, because I think you have to actually like hit submit on every single question, but you'd actually be collecting every single question response, regardless of if they answer all of them. So let's say they answer 5 of 10 questions. So like Enquire does that because you like have to hit the submit button. I'm pretty sure they do it anyways. Cool. I don't know 100%, but I would guess it would make sense. And then for ours, when we move you to the next question, or if you hit next, we save the response from whatever question. So like, so traditionally with like a Survey Monkey, you have to fill out the entire thing. Yeah, Typeform doesn't. Yep.
Typeform doesn't. It's batched.
Yeah,
so
and it's a lot more.
We lose all
it's a lot more expensive for us. Like honestly, that's part of our scaling issue, because like there's database calls on every single one, and that's like the types of things that we have to deal with. But like at the same time, if somebody's only going to answer 2 questions, we want you to have that data, and so that's why we do it that way. So, and again, I think with Enquire they'd be the same, just based off of like what I've seen from their survey flow. So, I do want you to use no, and I promise you it's more powerful and more affordable. But just in case you want other options, that's the one I would look at. Yeah.
That's fair. And to be fair, we're integrated with them, and then we're actually bringing you guys on very shortly, so you can do both soon. Rapid fire time. You ready? All right. Okay. Cool. Bits or Bytes business, or not Bits? Bits or Atoms businesses? What do you choose? Do you want because you have a SaaS business and you ran an actual inventory business?
SaaS
Which
is
one
easier.
do you like better?
I think inventory is more impactful. I think it matters more to the world. So
yeah.
So that's my approach. There's a difference between
I've never
walking around town and seeing people wearing your products, like in a place like Colorado. Colorado Glasses was our brand, right? I still see people walking around wearing our products. Like that's something really powerful about that, knowing that that's having an impact on on that person's daily life, right? So, and not to say software doesn't, but it's just different. There's something different about it.
Yeah. I love that. That's what a cool
underrated for sure.
Okay, cool.
Types of insight we saw.
Customer surveys, overrated or underrated?
Insane. Like, I got one example. Very large brand. They just bought some credit card data. The data told them that their average shopper was a woman in her mid to late 40s. They ran surveys, found out that their average shopper is a woman, or the credit card at least is for a woman of that age group, but the actual customer is a teenage girl. So, like you're not going to know that by buying that third-party data, right? The only way you find that is actually by asking your customers. So, highly underrated, completely changes their entire marketing strategy. So,
that is a really cool answer.
Oh, man.
I like it.
I'd say
Colorado, overrated or underrated?
Yeah, it's hard though because like people love Colorado. So, I think I'm going to say like especially from like a if you want to build a company, it's a great place. And so I think that'd be my caveat there. Like, I think it's people look at the Bay, they look at New York. I mean, Austin's kind of like that too. I think it's still probably a little underrated for like building a company, but yeah, it's a great place. Ooh, I think that's overrated.
Newsletters, overrated.
I know. No, I mean we actually haven't officially kicked it off yet. I love the idea, and we're gonna do it. But I think the problem with newsletters is that we're all only capable of digesting a couple of them, right? So like, how do we solve that problem? And I think that's why I say overrated. I don't know how to solve that. Fair. There's got to be a way, though, right? That's a big business. Somebody can figure that out.
Be really good. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Candidly, whale mail has been one of our biggest growth factors, but it gave me a ton of gray hair for a really long time. Like it's a big a proper newsletter is a big lift. It is a big lift for sure.
Overrated for Shopify specifically. Yeah, I'm gonna say that. I think if you're talking about Shopify, it's a very specific ecosystem. If you want to deliver a product, like for our app, we cannot rely on Shopify to bring us customers. Like what we're doing is not the thing that the merchants who are searching Shopify apps are looking for. So, and I would say you're probably in the same situation, right? Like, in fact, you guys aren't even listed, right? So, I would say unlisted, yeah. So like servicing Shopify merchants, definitely not overrated, but like building specifically for Shopify, totally overrated as far as I'm concerned. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. They started making some weird changes to their the app home store page and stuff, and I'm with you. It's a challenge. You're not really getting
overrated
the kind of overflow that you used to. NFTs, overrated, underrated.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but like, man, I like your art in the background. There's just something about that like NFTs as art, I just don't believe in it. NFTs is like a ticketing service or like some sort of utility, yeah, but like I don't know how I don't think it's dramatically better than what we're doing today. Yeah.
That I can get on board with. I think the use case of art for NFTs is just terrible. But something like ticketing and stuff like that is actually interesting, because then you could
Yes.
also stop the perversion
Absolutely.
of, like, you could say this ticket can only be 3x more
Yep.
than the base price or something there, because there's just so many distortions
Right.
in the market that
No, I
aren't
know.
real.
Yeah.
Like Ticketmaster and stuff will actually buy up the ticket. Anyways, we won't go down that road. But yeah, I think it's a really good.
Oh
It's a
man.
really good point there. Entrepreneurship, overrated
I'm
or
gonna say
underrated?
overrated. I mean, if I gotta pick one, I'm gonna say overrated. I think it takes a certain
Really, I love this answer.
personality to really thrive in it. And I think even that personality is gonna struggle at times, right? So like, it's a hard place to be. And going back to like what we talked about earlier about cash flow, having money in the bank, all that kind of stuff. There's it's That's not overrated, having a paycheck. And so like there's that. But I will say I'm one of those people, I can't stick it out in a business as an employee. Like I just can't. I've never been that way. I've never so like personally, I don't know. I'm always going to be an entrepreneur, but I would say like slightly overrated.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that was something that I had a really hard
Absolutely.
time with, where
Yeah.
I think it's okay for people
Yep.
to be employees. I could think it's totally fine. And there's people that
Nothing
just have
wrong
certain
with it.
risk tolerances that aren't aligned with entrepreneurship, and there's nothing wrong with
Yep.
that. And I had a really hard time like rationalizing that to myself, where it's like, dude, it's totally, people want to go from work to X to Y.
Yeah.
They want to turn off. They want to spend time with their family, play video games, whatever they want to do. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, Rob. And I'm more of your cut of jib, where like that just doesn't appeal to me. And like I'm just constantly on. And I think that I used to be very more entrepreneurship maxi. Everybody should start a business. Where
Yep.
I'm much more aligned with you, where it's like, if you
Yeah.
have the gene, if you will, do it. But if not, it's totally
Absolutely,
fine
man.
to
And
generate
you
value
cannot
for
build a
somebody
great
else and
company
get a
if
fair
everyone wants to
market
be an
wage
entrepreneur.
and live
That's
a
just
really,
the
really
reality.
meaningful life.
So it's I think everybody should consider it. I think a lot of people
Really
should
great
try
point.
it. I don't
Really
think
great
it's
point.
like a lifestyle for most people.
Yep.
Oh man.
Totally
All
agree.
right.
What's your favorite meal and why?
Very specific, but very basic. But my wife is from Cameroon, Central Africa. Whenever we go back and visit, yeah. Whenever we go visit, there's the
Cool.
way that they grill beef on the streets, like the street sellers, incredible. My favorite thing, and it's like $1 for like, well, probably like $2 or $3, like if you really want to get it right. But like, yeah, it's inexpensive, it's delicious, and it's just like the thing that I always want that I can never get enough of. They call it soya.
Oh, I love it. Is there
Yeah,
a
and it's
native
like
name for it or anything like
there's
that?
like the
Soya.
northern like Muslim tribes
Very
that
cool.
that are like the ones that came from, and they just do like this really good. It's like a lifestyle
Yeah.
thing, right? So like there's something about that that's different than like going and getting a steak at a restaurant. So
Yeah.
um
I love it.
so there's a podcast called Startup
Your
Therapy,
favorite
which I
podcast?
actually don't listen to as much as I should. Absolutely love it. It's just a couple of guys who've been doing startups for a long time. Yeah, startups.com is like the parent company.
heard.
Yeah. So and they own a bunch of companies, but
Yep.
like the two guys
Yeah,
that are
familiar.
like the guys there
Yeah.
have a podcast, and it's incredible because it's a lot of this kind of stuff. Like, hey, you don't have to sell for $1 billion to do something cool. You don't have to like risk your entire life savings to be an entrepreneur. Like those kinds of things, digging into that. What does it look like to like live a life as a healthy entrepreneur? Um,
It's beautiful. I love it. Favorite place to travel to and why?
like if I was gonna go on a vacation, I love Mexico. Um, like sunny, warm, inexpensive, relatively speaking. All about it. And then I do love going like I love going to places that are like Cameroon, like going hanging out there. Like there's just something cool about being in a place that's totally different. I'm the only white dude I see for weeks a lot of times.
Yeah.
Like in a city of 2 million people, like totally different lifestyle, totally
Yeah.
different way of being, and I like experiencing that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, last question. If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would they be? So you're sitting
Oh
at a
man,
table. There's 4 seats. You're
yeah,
at the
I
head.
always
You
struggle with
invite
these
3
because there's like
people.
so
Who are
many
you
people.
inviting?
I literally have a list of people I want to meet in person this year. You're on that list as well. Um, so yeah, I was okay. I was looking at
Come
that.
to Austin. It's
Okay,
gonna be great. We're gonna have the
sweet.
Whaleys in
I think
September.
that'd
You
be
got to
fun.
come
So
out for
yeah,
that.
I've kind of been like planning
You
how
got
am
to
I
come
going to
out
meet
for
up with
that.
all these
It's
people.
gonna be
So
so much fun.
um, all right, I'm gonna do people that I know and interact with constantly that I just have to connect with this year. So one of them is Pearson Crass. He and I've worked together for years. Literally never met in person. So kind of insane, but like we've made a lot of money together and done a lot of cool things and never been face to face. Uh Amrit, who runs Indie CPG, is amazing. She's awesome. I don't know if anybody listening knows her, but she's just like one of the biggest champions for CPG brands. I'd love to sit down and chat with her. Um, okay, yeah, she's super cool. So those are like a couple of
Oh,
people
I
that I
follow her on
really
Twitter
want to
actually.
meet.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
guess another guy too, Andrew Foxwell. So I'm actually going to be sitting down with him soon, which will be super fun. So yeah, I've
Oh
known
yeah,
him for
for
a
sure.
long time, kind of before
Great,
D2C was
great
hot.
dude.
So and he's been a somebody I've worked with a lot over the years too. So yeah.
I love it.
Oh my
Jeremiah,
goodness.
you made it through rapid fire. I should have known.
Yeah.
All your wilderness blood and training. You've prepared for this. Of course, you made it through. This time is
Yeah.
yours. Tell
So
people how to connect with you. How can they sign
if
up
you're
for
interested in
No?
using No, you can go to
The stage is yours, my friend.
knocommerce.com. And just to be clear, too, we don't just do post purchase service, we do everything. So we can be your MailChimp, or not MailChimp, definitely not your MailChimp. We can be SurveyMonkey for you. We can be Typeform. We can be post purchase service, like whatever you need, we've got you covered. So I think that's the first thing I would say there. And then, yeah, we're just all about helping. So literally, if you use a competitor and just want some feedback on how you can do better with it, we'll even have that conversation with you, and we love doing that. So, and yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. Just Jeremiah Prummer is my handle, and LinkedIn too. Happy to connect with you in other place. Yes, subscribe to our newsletter. It is coming. It's
And
planned
subscribe
to
to
start
No's
in May.
newsletter.
So
Make him
we just
send out a
haven't
newsletter.
gotten it done yet. So yeah.
Jeremiah, thank you so much for the time, man. This is one of my favorite podcasts. It's really cool to see somebody like so awesome realize success. There's a lot of times where you see really awesome humans not materialize into the best of their being, and you are living your best life, man, friend. It is really cool to see to be able to again watch from the sidelines and see how you can do it the right way, where you're just one of the most really just
Yeah.
down to earth and across all
Yeah, I
channels, where
appreciate you.
everybody that knows you
Thank
is
you so
just
much,
speaks
man.
so highly of you. So thank you so much for coming on, my friend. You crushed it. I really appreciate it. If you want to get more involved with Triple Whale, we're at trytriplewhale.com, and we do have a newsletter as well called Whale Mail. It goes out every Tuesday and Thursday. You can subscribe right on our Twitter page, which is at Triple Whale. That's it. That's 34 in the books. Jeremiah, thank you so much, man. It was super awesome. Go follow Jeremiah. Go sign up with No. Use the template. Start printing more money. And that's all we got for you, folks.